What are the top mistakes that people make in job interviews and how can you avoid them? I'm Emilie West, I'm a career coach and I'm here to help you achieve more success with less stress. And one of the things that causes people a lot of stress is job interviews. And this is because it can feel like there's a lot on the line, you're speaking to someone you don't know, and you probably haven't interviewed in a while. So we lose practice at job interviews. It's also quite hard to get honest feedback from people, so we don't always know what we're doing wrong. So when I'm coaching my clients and helping them prepare for interviews so that they ace them and get the jobs they want, what are some of the common mistakes that I spot and help them overcome? The first one is clients often try and take control of the interview. It's your interviewer's job to get the information they need out of you. So don't try and steer the conversation a certain way. Don't try and download every bit of information you know into your answer. Sometimes what I see is I'll ask a question when we're doing practice interviews and the candidate doesn't directly answer my question because they're too determined to get across some particular information that they've decided it's important that I hear as the interviewer. So what you need to do instead is really let the interviewer guide the conversation. Really listen to their questions and make sure that's what you answer. You don't answer with everything you know about the topic or everything you want them to know. You really answer their questions. If when you get to the end of the interview, there's some really key piece of information you feel you haven't shared, a really important piece of experience that you have that seems really relevant, then share it at the end and say, oh, there's just something we haven't covered. I'd like to let you know X, Y, and Z. Or you can even follow up with an email afterwards with extra information. But let the interviewer control the interview, and they're going to have a more enjoyable experience. Now, this leads me on to the second mistake, because often our answers are just too long. And if you give lots of really long answers, then your interviewer doesn't have the time to ask all the questions on their list. And they end the interview unsatisfied, having only asked 3 questions out of 20 that they had. So make sure you keep your answers nice and succinct. If you feel like it's been too brief, at the end of your answer, you can say, would you like more information about a particular area? Would you like more detail? That also comes across as really confident on your part that you're willing to give an answer, but also check in that it meets their needs. So make sure, particularly your answers early on in the interview, aren't too long to give the interviewer time to get to the really important questions. The next mistake is how people structure their interviews. So often when we're asked a question, we might start with a lot of detail, a lot of background information. We're doing the STAR model, we're starting with the situation, and we're kind of building up to the final point. And this means that answers can be rambling, they can be too long, and the person interviewing you, and sometimes that's me because I also interview people for other clients, is just sat there thinking, where is this going? What is the point? So you need to really think about how you structure your answers. And my top tip for this is structure your answers like a tabloid newspaper. Start with the big splashy headline. What is the point? Then give the subheadline and then give the detail. So if people are asking about a situation where you've had to deal with an ethical issues at work, for example, then yes, very quickly explain what the situation is, but quickly get to what was your approach. That's what they're trying to get from the answer. How did you tackle this? So you might say, I'm going to give you an example in a second, but this is something I've had to deal with a lot at work. So when I come up against this situation, these are the 3 steps I take. And that just shows your interviewer that you have a structured approach to whatever dilemma they're presenting. And then you can give the example and say, so for example, when I had a situation where the client's needs were different to the employer's needs, then I went back to this approach that I take. I did X, I did Y, I did Z, and we got to a positive conclusion. So when you're preparing for interviews, think about some of these situational questions they might ask you, and think about, what is my 3-step approach to that situation? What is the headline I need to get across? Sometimes people ask you, why do you want this job? And then people go all the way around the houses. Just start by saying, this job is really aligned with the work that I love doing, and I'm ready for a step up in my career. That's the headline. Then you can get more detail about your background, what you love about this particular company. Make sure you make them feel loved. Make sure you let them know why you want this particular job in this particular team with this particular business. But just start with a simple headline response of why this job is right for you. So really practice that, starting with the headline and then getting into the detail. The final thing that people often don't think about enough is how they present themselves. It really does make a difference to turn up professionally presented, having really thought about how you're dressed, the quality of your clothes, put a bit of effort into your appearance. It's a really nice way to show respect to the people who are interviewing you. Now you have to pitch this right. If you're interviewing at a trendy tech company where everyone wears trainers and a hoodie, then don't turn up in a Savile Row 3-piece pinstripe suit. But I still always think for the guys, especially, like, wear a shirt. I would never wear jeans to an interview, even if it's a more casual employer. You do want to show respect in how you're dressing. But if you're having an interview online, don't fall into the trap of being very casual, and also be very careful about your backdrop, because the backdrop makes a huge difference. So first of all, no messy backdrops, no beds in the backdrop, no very personal items. It needs to feel like it's in your living room or in a room downstairs. It's not too intimate. Obviously dress professionally, but also a lot of people will blur their backgrounds as a bit of an easy way out. Actually, blurred backgrounds are really distracting because our brain is trying to work out, what are you hiding? Why is it blurred? What's that shape in the corner? It's much better to have an unblurred, clear, neutral backdrop. Even if you have to move your desk or move your kitchen table to another corner of a room, a plain backdrop's better than a cluttered one. You can have a few items in the background like I do, but try not to have too personal, too messy, or a fuzzy backdrop. I hope that's given you some things to think about, and maybe you can think ahead of your next interview how you can put some of that into practice. And if you are interviewing for a job, I wish you the best of luck.